Tonight, Rishi Sunak becomes the first to reach the threshold of 100 MPs who publicly support him to become Tory leader and Prime Minister. He's out in front, but the former Chancellor hasn't yet confirmed that he's running. His likely rivals are the Commons leader Penny Mordaunt, who has declared, and Boris Johnson, who hasn't. But his backers say he's got the support. We'll bring you all the latest on the latest race to become Tory leader and Prime Minister, also tonight. Why was China's former leader escorted out of the usually highly stage-managed Communist Party Congress?
Just tell me what I've done to you.
I just don't like you no more.
And we speak to Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson about their new film about the end of a friendship. Good evening. Rishi Sunak, the former Chancellor, has over 100 Tory MPs backing him to become leader and Prime Minister. That is the number a candidate needs to enter the race. He's yet to announce publicly whether he will bid for the top job, but he got a boost tonight after Cabinet Minister Kemi Badenoch, seen as being on the right of the party, endorsed him as the next leader. Meanwhile, Boris Johnson has flown home from a holiday in the Caribbean as his supporters claim that he now also has 100 MPs backing him, although others have said this is hogwash. So far, Penny Mordaunt is the only contender to have officially launched a campaign. Our political correspondent, Damien Grammaticus, has more.
Are you running for leadership?
He was tight-lipped this morning, but Rishi Sunak clearly has a well of support among Conservative MPs. More than 100 now publicly backing him. And that sets up the extraordinary possibility he could face off against the man he helped bring down. Boris Johnson flying back from a Caribbean holiday for a possible political comeback. It's just over 4 months since Mr Johnson faced a revolt by his own MPs and a confidence vote.
The vote in favour of having confidence in Boris Johnson as leader was 211 votes. And the vote against was 148 votes.
More than 40% of his MPs had no confidence in him then. Dozens then resigned from his government. But some now say they want him to return.
We've seen in the last few days is some of the MPs who resigned, some of the MPs who called for Boris to go at the start of the summer have now said that they would like to see him put himself forward. They've admitted that they were wrong, and I know that there are many others waiting to hear on if he makes a decision to run before they go public.
Those who want him back remember this: Boris Johnson is a vote winner. Many Tory MPs haven't forgotten what followed: lockdown parties that broke the law. Parliament will soon begin hearings into whether Mr Johnson lied about this. It's why the man who was his deputy Prime Minister is backing Rishi Sunak.
I think the country needs a Prime Minister that is focused 100% on them. And I just don't see as a practical matter that can be Boris if he's then dealing with all of those issues. And I say that as someone who would love to see Boris return to frontline politics. I think he can, but I don't think he can until he's addressed those issues.
The first candidate to declare she was running was Penny Mordaunt last night, but she has far fewer public declarations of support.
I'm backing Penny because she's the candidate, I think, that can not only just bring the Conservative Party and Parliament together, but actually the whole country. She's got a proven track record working across 8 departments in her 12 years in Parliament.
This was Boris Johnson in July. To the right, Rishi Sunak. Later that day, Mr Sunak resigned as Chancellor, saying people needed competent, serious government. 3 days later, Mr Johnson was out of office. So the choice facing Tory MPs may come down to 2 men with a bitter history or an untested alternative compromise candidate. Damien Grammaticus, BBC News.
So what do voters make of the turbulent events in Westminster? Jessica Lane has been talking to people in the Conservative constituency of Penistone and Stocksbridge in South Yorkshire to find out.
As MPs are back in their constituencies this weekend, many will find out if what's happening in Westminster is the talk of their town.
I think that we've lost faith in all the politicians, Labour or Conservative, and I think it's time that we need to get a bit more stance within the country again.
Bit of stability back.
I've been in Spain last week on holiday, and all the Spanish people and German people keep saying, what's wrong with your country?
Well, we've been talking nothing else for the last few days.
It is the backstabbing, and that's the problem.
This constituency has this rural market town of Penistone and the industrial steelworks in Stocksbridge nearby. Historically Labour, it turned Conservative in 2019. The local MP, Miriam Case, says she has huge admiration for Boris Johnson, but she's backing Rishi Sunak for leader. But some business owners say they're more bothered about getting support soon.
The main thing is energy bills at the moment. That's what's crippling us. Our quarterly has gone up from £270 to £990 for 3 months. For a little shop like this, it's difficult.
Is that electric and gas?
Just electric. We've got no gas, so it's crippling us big time. So stuff like that needs sorting out.
Whatever does happen over the next few days, it's certainly giving people a topic to chew over here. Jessica Lane, BBC News in Penistone.
Well, back in Westminster, currently the BBC estimates that 204 out of 357 Tory MPs have gone public with their support. As you heard, Rishi Sunak has passed the key threshold of 100 backers. Boris Johnson has 53 and Penny Mordaunt 23. It's worth pointing out that these are the numbers that the BBC can verify. Others may have different information. Well, let's talk now to our political correspondent, Damien Grammaticus, who joins us from Westminster. Damien, those are the public numbers. What's going on behind the scenes?
Well, Reeta, the BBC has been told that those two men who are the front runners, neither of whom is declared officially yet, Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson, have been meeting tonight. Now, we don't know anything about what it might be about, but you could reasonably ask yourself, why would they want to meet at this point? Possibly, you could assume maybe to sound each other out, perhaps to try to come to some sort of an accommodation. We know that Rishi Sunak has what's crucial in a race like this, momentum. He's well past that threshold he needs. It seems very unlikely that he would be in any mood to stand aside. Perhaps he could be trying to seek some sort of accommodation from Mr. Johnson. But Boris Johnson's best hope may be to try to take it to a vote of the party membership where he might feel he would get some support. But when his candidacy put out today, they thought he might have had the 100 votes. They were asked to show the names. They haven't been able to. We only have them on 50. Momentum at the minute seems with Rishi Sunak.
Damien, many thanks. Damien Grammaticus there. And coverage will continue with Laura Kunsberg, who'll be here tomorrow morning at 9.
I'll be joined by one of the people vying to be your next Prime Minister, Penny Mordaunt, and the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, from the other side. See you at 9 on BBC One. In other news now, a 12-year-old boy has died after a wall collapsed at a house in Essex. Emergency services were called to the property in Clacton last night after a garage attached to a house collapsed. A man in his 30s was pulled from the rubble with an arm injury. A range of Avanti West Coast rail services have been cut throughout the day amid strike action by train managers. Only one train per hour ran from London to Manchester, Liverpool and Glasgow. The RMT union says the strike is the culmination of months of neglect. Power has been cut to 1.5 million households in Ukraine after another round of Russian strikes against critical infrastructure. Almost a third of the country's power stations have been destroyed in a wave of airstrikes since Monday last week. Ukrainian officials say many Russian cruise missiles have been intercepted by air defence systems. Footage of China's former leader, Hu Jintao, being asked to leave the stage in the Great Hall of the People in Beijing during the Communist Party Congress is drawing global attention. Mr. Hu was sitting beside President Xi Jinping when he was approached by officials who took him by the arm and led him away. Chinese state media have blamed ill health for the incident during what is usually a highly choreographed event. Well, our correspondent Stephen McDonald joins us from Beijing now. And Stephen, what are we to make of what we've just seen?
Well, the first thing you notice from these incredible events at the Great Hall of the People is that China's former leader, when asked to leave, doesn't want to go. And you have to ask yourself, why? What's going on? Well, because he represents a type of government so different to the way things are done now. A period of opening up to the outside world, of collective leadership. Speculation has first turned to the possibility that this was a piece of political theatre, that he was being symbolically removed to show who's really in charge. But then, when you look at the footage more closely, he doesn't seem to be well. At times, he doesn't seem to know what's going on. If there were legitimate health reasons, though, for him to be removed, why did Hu Jintao have to go so suddenly? Why at that time, and why do it in front of the cameras? Unfortunately, China's system, though, is so opaque that we're getting nothing else from the government by way of explanation.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Now, how do you respond when your best friend randomly decides to call time on your lifelong friendship? Well, that's the plot of the film The Banshees of Inisherin, which is set in the 1920s on a fictional remote island off the coast of Ireland. Our entertainment correspondent Lizo Mazimba has been talking to its stars Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson.
Have you been round?
Dark and quirky.
What the hell's going on with you, me brother?
He's dull, Siobhan.
But he's always been dull.
Humorous and compelling.
You're behaving awful unusual.
The film tells the story of a lifelong friendship that suddenly ends.
People have responded to it in such a positive way, and it's meant something to the people that I've spoken to that have seen it. There's been a kind of a relatability or a personalisation of this film in regard to their own lives and their own experience of whether it's friendship loss or isolation had to be dealt with. So it means a lot. It's lovely.
Yeah, breaking up and all that kind of stuff is like we've all had a bit of it. It's hitting home with people in a way that's quite moving and stuff. You just kind of feel, wow, you know, this is one that has worked the way it should.
Do you know who we remember for how nice they was in the 17th century?
Who?
Absolutely no one. Yet we all remember the music of the time. Everyone to a man knows Mozart's name.
I don't, so there goes that theory.
One of the central themes is how much people should sacrifice in order to create meaningful art, with both actors drawing on their own experiences.
Through the years, I've missed things. I've missed funerals of people who meant a lot to me. Yeah. I missed, you know, I have 2 children. I missed the birth of one. I was there for the birth of another one, but only because I wasn't gainfully employed at that time, thank God. So at least I was there for one of my boys being born. But you miss really important, fundamentally important moments.
At one stage, I was nearly 7 months away over the year in 3 different jobs. It's too much for my kids. It was breaking my heart to be there. And I said, there's a certain level, I'm missing too much. So it's a constant line you're trying to walk.
How gratified are you to be talked about as Oscar contenders?
If you got a nomination or something like that and I did, we'd have a laugh with it.
We would.
We would have a laugh with it. And then it'd be business as usual, do you know what I mean? And then it'd be business as usual.
Yeah.
You know, afterwards.
No, but it'd be great.
That'd be a laugh. Yeah. I want it, is what he's saying. Yeah. I want it. When do we find out?
Well, Oscar nominations are still 3 months away, but when they are announced, many expect to see the names Gleeson and Farrell on that list. Lizo Mazimba, BBC News.
Time for all the sport now. Here's Lizzie Greenwood-Hughes at the BBC Sports Centre. Lizzie.
Thank you, Rita. Good evening. We're starting at the Rugby League World Cup, where hosts England have almost guaranteed their place in the quarter-finals with a game to spare. Still unbeaten, they cruised to victory over France today, 42 points to 18, as Adam Wilde reports.
Preparing for a party in Bolton, this much more like the noise, the atmosphere this tournament is desperate to find. But nothing brings to life an occasion quite like the hosts on sparkling form. And here was England. Their audience was waiting. Well, they didn't have to wait long. No one has scored more for England than Ryan Hall. This the first of his 2 tries in just the opening minutes. They call Victor Radley Victor the inflictor. Well, here was Victor the assister. Luke Thompson offered a stroll to the posts. But whilst he was running away with it, England weren't allowed to. France finding an energy that few had expected, wriggling their way back into it before the break. But that, for England, was quite enough of a warning. A renewed focus, a renewed force. First, Elliot Whitehead went storming through. A calmness, a control restored. That's before England's fans lost theirs completely. Dom Young is turning into the superstar of this tournament. Here he ran the full length of the field. The blockbuster moment this occasion deserved.
After criticism over empty seats, this a little more what organisers will have wanted. At times, it wasn't as comfortable as many England fans expected, but it was, crucially, the victory England needed. Adam Wilde, BBC News in Bolton.
Match of the Day and sports scene are on after the news, but if you don't want to wait, here come the day's football headlines. And the biggest shock was at Nottingham Forest, who beat Liverpool 1-0 to climb off the bottom of the Premier League table. Elsewhere, there were wins for Manchester City and Everton, while Manchester United drew at Chelsea. VAR made plenty of impact on its debut weekend in the Scottish Premiership, where leaders Celtic beat Hearts in a 7-goal thriller. Elsewhere, Rangers drew, while Aberdeen, Kilmarnock and St Mirren won. England's cricketers are off to a winning start at the T20 World Cup, beating Afghanistan by 5 wickets after a record-breaking bowling performance in Perth. Jane Dougal reports.
Huddled together, England knew anything but a victory in this match would be a shock. But Afghanistan have improved of late and were keen to show it. Captain Jos Buttler's decision to field first paid off handsomely. Liam Livingstone's superb dive got some musical appreciation. Then came a succession of stunning catches from Moeen Ali, Adil Rashid and this one from Buttler. But it was Sam Curran who was man of the match.
5 for Sam Curran.
Becoming the first Englishman to take 5 wickets in an international T20. And so to bat. 113 the target for England, but the Afghans had some good fielders of their own.
That is brilliant!
The chase, perhaps tougher for England than expected, but Livingstone's unbeaten 29 got them over the line. A convincing win then by 5 wickets, and England second in their group. Jane Dougal, BBC News.
Scotland's women are out of the Rugby Union World Cup, thrashed by host New Zealand 57-0 in their final pool game. But Wales could still reach the quarter-finals if results go their way after their 13-7 defeat to Australia earned them a losing bonus point. And that's the sport. Reeta.
Thank you, Lizzie. And you can see more on all of today's stories on the BBC News channel. That's all from me. Good night.